wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining me for this week's edition of the SMIE Consulting Midweek Roundup. It is Wednesday, June 28th, 2023, and today we're coming to you live from Beijing, and we are in the second week, our final day of meetings for our UNLV delegation trip to China. I started back in Hong Kong on a week ago Sunday, and I've had some very good positive visits in Hong Kong. Our university provost and one of our business professors from China joined us in Guangzhou, where we met with a university partner, Sun Yat-sen University, visited their Zhuhai campus just opposite Macau, as well as our Guangzhou main campus, had some productive meetings there. We'll be signing an MOU with them shortly. We finished 2 days in Wuhan after a visit to Three Gorges Dam, where we chatted last week. And our partnerships that were signed with Wuhan University and Wuhan University of Science and Technology, we did shortly after our live last week. So we are in the home stretch. Yesterday, we met with Beijing Normal University here in Beijing, signed our MOU with them. Looking forward to some exciting partnerships there. And today visited with the CEAIE offices and their cooperating group, CCIEE, that manages the 121 program, dual degree program. That is put together in conjunction with ASCU in the United States, American Association of State Colleges and Universities. I had worked with ASCU on these 121 programs back when I was at Ball State, started back in 2003, so 20 years ago. Met Sufei Li from ASCU, who has been over in China for the last 2 weeks, organizing the graduation ceremonies that just concluded last week, and is leaving tonight for back to Virginia, back to home for her. So good to reconnect years later with her here in China. So we at UNLV, we are, as I mentioned, this trip is the first for our provost to China. It is an institutional partnership building trip. It's not a direct recruitment trip at all, but really laying the foundation for some successful partnerships in the years to come that will take us to a very different level here in China. We're fortunate enough, due to Professor Hongwei Deng's relationships in China. He's a former Ministry of Education official. That was his first job out of grad school, and 30 plus years later, he's now been working for UNLV, and is helping us to engage in China significantly for the first time ever. And we've always had international students from China on campus at UNLV for the last 10, 15 years, 20 years. But really, it's just letting them come. It wasn't really in any organized way. And now we're really entering into a period where we already have a good solid base of Chinese students, and we will be seeing those numbers only increase in the years to come as a result of these activities today. And for us, as an institution like UNLV, we're an R1 research institution, so we call ourselves a top 100 research school because there's only about 130 R1 schools in the U.S. But we're punching above our weight, frankly, with regards to the partnerships that we're setting up here, which is great. It elevates UNLV's reputation when we can walk into rooms in China and say we're partnering with Sun Yat-sen University, Wuhan University of Science and Technology, which is more probably on level with us as a peer institution academically and reputationally, and then Beijing Normal. So we got Wuhan University is a top 6 university in China. Sun Yat-sen is a top 16. Beijing Normal is top 10 as well, 10 or 11 in the country. So we're partnering with some major players and some well-respected institutions. Part of that is due to our hospitality program being the #1 in the world, not just in the U.S., but the world. And so that's helped get the door open for us to at least 2 or 3 of these institutions that we've signed partnerships or will be signing shortly. And it's really opening the door for us, in addition to what we're doing with ASCU, which I'll talk about in a minute. These partnerships are entryways into are providing the building blocks for a lot of what we're going to do institutionally, because we don't have a huge staff. And that's one of the things I think in talking to each of the universities and my peers, the director of international offices at the different institutions, from Sun Yat-sen, where they have 2 different campuses and they have international folks at both offices, both campuses. I think they have 10 total staff there. Wuhan University probably has 14 staff. We met Wuhan University Science and Technology has about 6 or 7 staff. They don't have as many international partnerships, so they're probably kind of a midway along where we want to be internationally in terms of developing those. And then getting to Beijing Normal yesterday, we asked the question, how many international staff do you have? And they have 40 in their international office, for, managing the different elements of international partnerships, just partnerships across the globe. So Beijing Normal, obviously Wuhan University, Sun Yat-sen are, like I said, top 10, top 15 institutions. So they've all got massive networks of overseas partners, 200-300 at a time for those highly regarded institutions. So for us to be in that number and have laid out some decent plans for how we're going to grow those partnerships or manage those has been fairly significant. And I think for me, what's important for our certainly our institution to understand is this is not 0 to 100 in one visit. This is laying the foundations this year, starting with something manageable. Everybody wants to do student exchanges where we can probably accommodate some student exchanges as guest students for a semester, for a year. They're still going to pay tuition because we don't have bilateral agreements that way for UNLV. It kind of gets, don't have to worry about that balance. We don't have the real advantages of being able to offer partner universities yet in-state tuition instead of out-of-state, which every international student has to pay. So these are things that we're going to work on, but we have to get special permission in order to be able to do that from the Board of Regents for Nevada. So there's some hoops we have to jump through, but it's certainly helped open the eyes of senior leadership at the institution, with the provost coming on this trip. His first trip to China, really seeing and understanding from our peer institutions and some that are well above us that the staffing levels, the process they've gone through to get where they are, it's a long and winding road. And it doesn't start right away with partnerships that are going to result in 10, 15, 20 students a year from each institution. That's a little bit further off, given the one-on-one natures of partnerships. They have to grow over time. But there are the building blocks now in place for some of our programs to really work together on research. And partnerships aren't just about recruitment, and that's important to remember. As I mentioned, this is a partnership building trip, not a recruitment trip. There'll be some recruitment benefits of it down the road, but not immediately. What is important, I think, to understand in this partnership activity, particularly here in China, is there are formalities, there are processes that you want to go through and will need to understand before you get into them too deeply, so you're not frustrated in the back end. And there are levels of institutions here in China that you want to make sure you're competing with, or not, you're partnering with institutions that are at or above where you are as an institution. And that takes some finesse to understand that, and some insider knowledge that you certainly want to be connecting with your Chinese faculty on campus, those that have had experiences in the higher ed system here in China, to be able to comment effectively. And recent experiences help too in terms of knowledge, because reputations change over time, just like they do in the U.S. So that's something that I think is an important step for us in our learning process at UNLV. Very, very grateful that the provost is committed 2 weeks, 10 days of his time to be here. This is the longest trip he's ever done internationally. First time to China for him. So he's really seen, I think, a lot of what we will need to do to get where we want to be. And he realizes and is committing to the understanding that it's not an overnight success thing. We have to build slowly, we have to build correctly and in the right areas. And these partnerships that we're starting here will form a fantastic foundation for us moving forward. So really excited about what's to come at UNLV through our partnerships in China. So the institutional partnerships are certainly one piece I wanted to discuss with you today. And if you're wondering what the background is, we're in the northeast section of Beijing, between the 3rd and 4th Ring roads, so at a Marriott here. So some office buildings and apartment buildings in the background. So not really in the mix of things, but far enough out where we're closer to where we needed to be for different meetings that we have, and have another one come up in about an hour. So, but back into town. So we, in addition to our institutional partnerships, one of the things we had prioritized on this trip and leading up to the trip, having conversations with senior leadership. My immediate boss, the senior vice provost of academic affairs, had a conversation with her about this, and the provost back at the beginning of May. We met with ASCU, folks at American Association of State Colleges and Universities, met with them, their representatives in DC during NAFSA. My boss, senior VP of academic affairs. We had already gotten the provost to agree to join ASCU. We hadn't been members in 10, 15 years, so we were rejoining ASCU, really. And ASCU is the pathway for us to be able to pursue these 1+2+1 programs. As I mentioned at the top, I'd worked previously at another ASCU member school back in 2003 to 2008, where we had we were one of the first institutions that joined the 1+2+1 programs. These are dual degree programs, students do their first year in China, middle 2 in the U.S., and final year, 4th year back in China. And this allowed us to work with cohorts of students from China, from partner universities that were matched with us through ASCU and CCIEE in China, and that agreed to common majors, that students were recruited before they come out of high school specifically for this program in cohorts of 20 to 30 per institution per major. So we would have, or 20 to 30 per institution, and then we would have 3 or 4 or 5 institutions that were regular contributors partner-wise to our programs. So we go through the articulation process, built those programs, came out to meet with students that had been recruited for them before they went for their visa interviews. And this was done started back in 2002, 2003, with these students coming on J visas, and doing that primarily because at the time, Chinese undergraduates weren't really very common yet in the U.S., and it was done having them come on J's to make sure that they returned home for their 4th year to get their degree, and otherwise they would be booted from the program and would not get their Chinese equivalent degree, and it would really look bad for them if they did that. So coming on J's really solved the visa issue. We would meet with the students immediately prior to them going for their visa interviews, so we got to know them before they came in the fall. So it was really an important step back then, 2003 to 2008, to have those meetings here in China in June, right before they go for their interviews. It's gotten to the point now where they don't need to do that anymore. They're experiencing 99% plus visa success rate, and they even had students coming during the pandemic. So they're ramping back up to probably close to 1,000 per year that they'll be sending through these programs to different partner institutions in the United States. I think there are 40 or so U.S. member schools, ASCU member schools that are participating in this program now. So we're going to be a part of that, where you have to first identify which majors we're going to articulate. Then we get matched with partners later in the September-October period, and then get everything fully articulated before March, so that when students register for their Gaokao exams coming out of high school and coming to one of our partner institutions in the fall of 2024, they will be self-selecting into a pathway to come to us after they complete their first year in their home institution in China. So it's a really exciting time, and timing for us it's going to be a little tight to get everything done September, October, to get ready for what we need to finalize every articulation agreement by next March, but we can probably do that so that we are in the mix for students to come starting fall of 25 who have completed their first year in China, coming to us for the middle 2 years and then returning home as the first cohort from our Chinese partners. So the good news is some of the Chinese partners we've met with already, or just on this trip that we've signed agreements with, Wuhan University of Science and Technology, Beijing Normal here in the capital, could be potential one-to-one partner programs, partner institutions for us. So we kind of killed a couple birds with one stone. So we start building the relationship with the partners we've just signed with, and then potentially adding one or two more into the mix that are high quality, that are also have good program matches for us. So that extra piece, that extra layer on top of the institutional partnerships that we're building, having this organizational body like an ASCU that we can be working with in China that helps do a lot of legwork, frankly. We will have to do a lot of institutional legwork to get our articulation agreement signed and up and running and make sure all the I's are dotted and T's crossed on those before we start bringing students in. But that's a piece that we can manage on the front end so that we can reap the benefits after a year of being able to enroll students and then having potentially 60 to 100 students per year coming from partners for 2 to 3 different academic programs that we would articulate with our Chinese partners. So it's really a nice added bonus to what we're already have from coming from China, the institutional partnerships that will have students here and there, maybe some pipelines built up for grad programs, and capacity development for faculty at some institutions in certain areas are a real possibility. So for us, that's something we're seeing some real traction with. So I'm looking forward to what that's going to mean for us down the road. The final piece I wanted to chat with you about today is one of the exciting pieces of where we are. Our location is in Northeast Beijing. Going to some of our meetings, we actually passed by the visa section for the U.S. Embassy here. And each day that we've gone by early morning before 8 o'clock most mornings, we see long lines waiting to get in before the embassy opens to drop off their paperwork, have their interviews. So very exciting to see long lines again here. It's peak season for visas. They do all the interviews in the morning and then have the paperwork ready the next day or two. And so the processing is done in the afternoon. So it's been really interesting each day as we go by. The lines are getting longer and there's eagerness there, and that's really excitement building in terms of knowing that a year ago there was hardly any wait for visa appointments here in Beijing or anywhere in China. The year before, nobody was really open, so it didn't matter. But to see the numbers returning to come in the fall is great. Obviously, I don't know how many of those are students. This is anecdotal. It's just us passing by the embassy 3 days this week, seeing all the lines. I don't have numbers for you there, but certainly it looked very busy, and that's encouraging. And other lines, our professor reported in Guangzhou, the consular section there was just as busy, long lines, miles long, he says. I'm not sure about that, but it's good to see those numbers returning. And I think that's happening also because there are beginning to be more flights added to the U.S. from China and vice versa. So that was, as I mentioned in my first chat last week, that was a real issue for us getting here. Just the flights were just so darn expensive. And I didn't even fly direct into China. I had to fly to Hong Kong and then take a train from Hong Kong to Guangzhou. Tomorrow, when I go home Thursday, I'm flying from Beijing to Seoul, Incheon, and then connecting up with my return home ticket home. So it's really a challenge. Tomorrow I have the added excitement of flying out of the new airport here at Beijing Airport. So that's going to be an adventure. It's a massive airport, supposedly the largest by area, at least in the world now. So looking forward to flying out of there and seeing what all the high-tech gear and gadgets that airport has to offer. But in the end, what this trip has shown me is that China is reopening and is open for business. Universities are hungry to work with U.S. partners. There's real palpable desire to do so, and that hasn't always been the case. Certainly, even with all the politics of the last 7 years, it's been a real challenge where we've had real obstacles, many of them political, and that have prevented real strengthening of relations with with China educationally. And in the end, as I've been sharing with the provost, asking about some of the things to bring up at these meetings we have with partner institutions. And as you know, if you've ever done one of these trips with meeting with partner institutions, it's always long speeches. And if you're lucky enough to have the party secretary, that every university has a party secretary member, is a VP level kind of person, cabinet level person, that they also give speeches as well, and they have to be very prescribed in what they say. It's all in Chinese, and then it gets translated. Some presidents are able to speak in English conversantly, but they still have to have all their speeches approved. And that's kind of one of the quirks of coming to China, just something to get used to. But in sharing with our provost about what he needed to make sure he mentions is in terms of what not to say, what to say, and certainly keeping it high level in terms of taking a diplomatic stance on everything in terms of how education builds bridges between our countries and how we want to draw closer to China, not pull away, and that we're willing to engage where we can and substantively with partner universities. So it's been some really strong conversations that have happened, and after you get through those speeches, get to some of the hard and fast conversations over dinner, things loosen up, and when you start doing the ganbei and passing it around. I will say that there's a lot less of that than I was used to back in the early days of coming here, when there'd be standard university dinners. Apparently there's been some major concerns over the years with university leaders and corruption and that type of thing. So they've been instructed no big university dinners that you're paying forth with university partners. So to keep it low key, maybe have them on campus. Don't include a lot of liquor if you're hosting. So that's certainly something that's changed. But if you do get to that environment, then certainly that social drinking piece is an important part of the relationships. And hey, it's how you build connections with your potential partners, to know who they are and what they like, and participate with them in what they're proud of, their culture and what they're sharing. And that's an important piece of the puzzle. And we can never really forget that. It's, in the end, yes, we want to build partnerships. We want them to be strong. We want exchanges and students to come for degrees, all of that fun stuff. But to make these work, it's really about the relationships you have to build with your partner universities. And that involves some work and getting to know them. It's not all transactional. It can't be if you're going to be successful long term. So I think taking the right steps initially that we've talked about the last couple of weeks with these lives is really where your focus needs to be. Yes, there will be some growing pains getting reaccustomed to travel in China. It's been 15 years since I've traveled in China. It's been a lot of changes. Just the frustration of not being able to pay for things without having Alipay fully implemented, being able to pay for services, like if someone buys you dinner and you want to pay them back as an institution, to be able to get receipts and all these things electronically, it just poses a few extra challenges and hoops you have to jump through. But it's a different piece, a different part of working here and living here in China and traveling here. So we've had a fantastic trip the last few days. I'll be heading out tomorrow. And then my provost and his wife and one of our business college professors will be staying through till Friday and returning then. So it's been a wonderful trip, but learn a lot of lessons learned on this trip, positive ones. So really seeing a lot of potential back here in China. It's good to be back, and I can't wait to see the potential realized in the next few months and years. So that's all we have for you this week. But until next time, wish you all the very best, and happy to chat about any of the topics we cover in the lives at a time more convenient for you.